Hello, everyone. Welcome. Great to see some familiar faces and some new names joining. We will give everyone a moment to pop into this session before we get started. We always love to hear where folks are calling in from. Feel free to share in the chat where you're located. We've had folks from all over the world join us in the last few sessions, so always really fun to see where folks are from. Welcome, welcome. Give everyone just another moment here to get into the session before we get going. All right, we will go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Customer Success Unlocked. I'm Marley Wagner. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Digital Customer Success here at ESG. Love to welcome you to our webinar titled Partner Success, the New Frontier. I'll be serving as your host today, as usual, alongside my co-moderator, ESG's Vice President of Customer Success, Peter Ermely. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Marley. Hi, everybody.
And I'm super excited to introduce our guests today, and I do have a few quick housekeeping notes. But before we do either of those, Peter, I realized that this marks the 1-year anniversary of Customer Success Unlocked. And last July, instead of sitting here as my co-moderator, you were sitting on the other side of the table as our very first guest. And look at us now. So I can't believe it's been a year.
That was awesome. I really enjoyed the experience so much. I joined the company.
Right? Now you wanted to work here. I love it. Well, just had to take a moment to reminisce. And a couple of quick housekeeping notes for everyone. First, today's session, as usual, is going to be fireside chat style. So you won't be seeing slides on your screen. Promise your Zoom is working just fine. And we are recording the session. Everyone in attendance today will receive a link to the recording within 24 hours. Please go ahead and submit questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen throughout the session. We'll get to as many as we possibly can today. I know this is a really diverse and interesting topic, so especially want to know what you guys want to hear about. With that out of the way, here comes the fun part. I get to introduce our wonderful guests. First, I want to introduce Star Hofer, who's the Chief Customer Officer of Partnerstack. Welcome, Star. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And second, Carlos Quezada, Head of Digital Services Strategy and Customer Success at Aruba. Carlos, welcome back. This is your second time on the webinar as well. We're glad to have you again.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into this very, very meaty topic. So I want to first ask both of you, Star, maybe we'll go to you first. I want to begin and make sure we're all kind of on the same page, talking about the same topic here. So let's start with a brief definition of how you define partner success. How do you define it? Why do you define it that way? Why does that make sense to you? Star, to you first.
Well, first, I'm just going to note that partner success is evolving. And so what I might define today, even at Partnerstack, we're still also trying to feel out what is the definition, because the definition is ever changing, especially in the B2B landscape. B2C, it's been around for a little longer, but B2B, it's still being defined. I kind of look at it as when I think of partnerships as a whole, it really is a deliberate orchestration of all the participants. And so that can change, like what title you give it can change in an organization. So at Partnerstack, for example, we have partner success that falls under the CS umbrella, but we also have channel partner managers that also manages the success as well. And it's two different sides. But because we're actually in the partnership space, it has a bit of a twist to it. So for us, partner success means how you're actually driving the orchestration of value and success and goals for the partners. And that could be completely different angles. On the CS side for partner success, that is our high value partners that our own partnerships team has brought in. And then we're looking at them almost like a book of business of going, okay, here is all of our top key partners and running a CS motion on those. And then from the channel partner success side of things, same thing, but you have more of the bow tie perspective, everything from bringing in the lead, but then also managing the success and nurturing post side of that as well.
That makes sense. And I think it's important to share that perspective, right? The definition is going to be different for everyone, right? Sure, we're all talking about the same concepts, but depending on how your business works and how your business runs and how you interact with partners, it is going to be a little bit different. So Carlos, same question to you. How do you define partner success? What does it mean to you in your world and at Aruba?
You know, one thing that's consistent about the customer success world, everyone has their own definition of it. And Star just blew my mind with the way she's approaching the partner success model. And, you know, got a bunch of light bulbs going on in my head now about what we're doing and how we can maybe augment that. So a little bit about our program, right? So I work for Aruba, who's part of larger HPE. We have a 3-tier distribution system. And when we started customer success at Aruba, we started with a digital first approach. You know, we've scaled it through digital mostly. And till this day, we don't have a traditional CSM portfolio model. We still do the swarm CSM model. And so our path to scale customer success has always been around monetization of customer success, so embedding customer success managers and capabilities through advanced service programs. And the second is, you know, enable our partners to drive customer success on our behalf. So while STAR's model is to have kind of success managers making sure their partners are successful, I feel like we kind of do the same thing, but that's not the primary focus. The focus is how can we go and enable partners and train partners on how they can also be customer success managers for our install base. And so in our model, what we've done is we've taken our digital approach and we've essentially handed it over to our partner community. Obviously, partners have to qualify to be part of this program. But as part of that, they actually get the white label digital comm stuff that we've built for our customers, and they get to rebrand it as their own. We do have partner success managers, but those partner success managers are helping partners be successful at being CSMs for their customers. So it allows us to take the benefit of the economy of scale, where rather than having a customer success manager managing 50 customers, we have a PSM managing, you know, 13, 14 partners. But those partners in who are actually managing over 300 customers. And so I think indirectly, we may kind of be achieving some of the stuff that Star's talking about, but not as a primary focus. It's more of enabling the partners to drive the success motions on our behalf.
And I think that's an important distinction too, Carlos, because, you know, how my brain works, how I think about it, you know, we can talk about success for the channel or success through the channel. Right. And I would say both are our partner success, right? But when you're talking about it, you have to define which one are we talking about? Are we talking about success for our partners and enabling them to then service end users? Or are we talking about success for end users through the channel, right? And again, both are included, but they look a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I kind of think about there, Marley, is that the latter, where you're working through partners, my simplistic kind of business brain suggests to me that the answer is you're respecting them as independent companies with their own missions, their own kind of agency. And if you want to grow your own business, you need to have partner in the partner ecosystem. And so that's just a kind of a delicate dance you have to participate in. And so I think that's probably the way a lot of senior leaders are thinking of it, is driving success through the partners. And I think that's where a lot of questions come up about, well, how do you do that? But how do you ensure that the end customer is getting the kind of experience you hope they get, that more direct customers might get. You know, I have another question too. You know, a lot of companies, I don't expect you guys have done industry research, but a lot of us have, and a lot of companies put partner success on the back burner. They know it's important, They want to get to it. They're not really highly prioritizing it though. And then also, you might actually hear an argument that, well, we already have partner programs in place. Why do we need to kind of really elevate this criticality of partner success? So, I mean, if you agree with this premise that a lot of companies put it on the back burner, why do you think that might be the case? What do you think is kind of preventing them from kind of moving forward with that? Why don't we start with you, Star?
That's a big one. I'm going to answer it in a couple folds, because I think if you're like a small business, so you're in the SMB space, it's a bit of like resources. So your board might be pushing you to do this because you're trying to accelerate growth or revenue in a certain way, and you just don't have, the bandwidth to add more headcount. So you look at partnerships as a way of doing it. Unfortunately, when you're trying to augment customer success, and it's too soon. Because you haven't figured out your go-to-market motion, and so they're being pushed to drive a partnerships program when they still haven't figured out their own go-to-market. And so as a result, there's the risk of failure, and failure will happen, right? Because they either don't have expertise on how to do it, or they're just doing the check mark to get by for the board. So that's option one that we see here at Partnerstack in the partnership space. The second one that happens is more in like the mid-market and enterprise. It's more of they're moving to reseller. But when they're moving to reseller, the reseller in the B2B space is changing. That's adapting quite a bit. It's more about unlocking your distributors is more of the play. But if you go down the bottom of the funnel a little bit more in the affiliates and the referral space, then it's trying to figure out how do you define like and nurture that partner success is something that a lot of organizations haven't quite figured out yet, because they figured out how to get in the door and they know what their go-to-market is, but they haven't figured out how to scale and put a value to it. And putting the value to it other than just dollars and cents is one thing, but then what does expansion look like? What does renewals look like on those? It may even be co-selling on those co-selling motions, but they haven't broken out all of their metrics to have a very partnerships specific on those, on the partner side being talked about in the business is all being lumped in as sales. Or all being lumped in as customer success, but it really should be its own stack of metrics. So I think that that's really it, is that there is no conversation of value being talked within the organization. And so then it looks like it's failure, even though it might actually be successful. But that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, that's more than 2 cents. I've got a lot of thoughts on that, but I'm interested, Carlos, if you have some additional kind of commentary on it.
Yeah, I think I echo a lot of the stuff that Star mentioned there. I think I would kind of maybe summarize it as it comes down to, I think, overall customer success in the industry and its maturity, right? So when you take a look at, 4 or 5 years ago, like customer success as a science is relatively new, right? And it's always been a very broad term, and I think it's been doing a better job of really landing on this is what it really is. And when you're getting started, you still have to figure out, because there's all these different models, right? Like, are you under services, under your sales? Are you driving expanding and cross-sell? Are you driving adoption and retention, right? So you got to land all of that internally before you invite somebody in your house. So when you invite somebody in your house, you got to make sure your house is clean and you put the skeletons in the closet, right? And so I think a lot of that has to happen first. And then we have this whole pandemic happening, right? And what ended up happening is a lot of the initial models of customer success broke, right? Because you had organizations that went and hired CSMs first, started doing portfolio assignment, and then as the business shrunk, right, and you started having more CSMs than you needed, and there was budgetary pressure to go in and drive efficiencies, then the next wave, I would say, of maturity came, which is now, and which I'm seeing now, is how can we do more through digital? And I mean, Marley and I have a lot of great conversations around this, right? So I think kind of wave 2 was kind of like this digital era, which is, how can we go in and do more with less and really go in and drive more engagement? And now that we've kind of figured out the CSM model and folks are starting to kind of, get really good at digital engagement, I think the next natural progression is scalability through partners, right? And so I think, to me, that's kind of what we're seeing. I'd find it very difficult to start in the partner ecosystem. There's a lot of dimensions that you don't control that you have to consider, everything from how a partner gets comped to a renewal and all these other things, right? And so I think you have to figure out, what you do really well first internally. And then, in our case, right, we started with a pilot. We did a pilot for a year, really learning from our partners, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, what they like, what they don't like. How do we differ from our competitors? Because at the end of the day, we want to make it a lot more pleasant experience for our partners versus what our competitors are doing. So we hear from them what they like and don't like from that side. And so that to me is how it's kind of evolved, and why I think that bringing the partner success model in, I think it's at a particular point of maturity for an organization, and that point will be different for all orgs, right? I don't think you could say at the 2-year mark I'm launching a partner program. Well, that's only true if you've established a certain level of maturity in some of the other processes.
So in many ways, it's like a common kind of customer success challenge is, how do you articulate this? How do you tell this story of evolution? Carlos, you just described a pretty good kind of evolution of customer success, and I want to bring in what Star was talking about, how it's one thing to set up partners in a kind of commercial arrangement. It's then opens up this door, this Pandora box of all these other things you need to think about in terms of KPIs and metrics and all that kind of stuff. And that's a lot for customer success organizations that's very mature, that hasn't established, as you say, Carlos, the fundamentals and got good at those things and developed some perfection and excellence around that stuff. To start thinking about that is probably way, way too much. And they don't have the credibility. So I think, and they also factor on top of that, they probably don't have a voice, someone who's kind of telling the story, why this matters, why partner ecosystem is critical to our growth. And you need to figure out how to have the right kind of motions in place. So this is a really good kind of commentary. Thank you for both.
Yeah, and we have a really good question from the audience that I want to pause and ask you, because Carlos, you mentioned the pilot program that you ran with your partners, and Michael in our audience is asking, can you elaborate on that? What did that look like? How did that work? And I think it's a great example of how to build on that scalability you were talking about, right? To thoughtfully take your organization to the next level. So we just give us a little more detail, Carlos, on that pilot program you guys ran.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let me just kind of set the groundwork of where we were when we launched the partner program. So right as we started having the discussion about building out this partner program, we already established some maturity around, what I would call our tech ecosystem. So we had a customer success automation tool in place. We have the ability of being able to monitor customers through the progression of the journey. We're able to have a concept of the customer health score, and we're firing off digital engagements that are contextual and timely based on where the customer is. So that had already been established. And so now the question is how can we go in and share some of that information? How can we scale it, right? One of some context, we started with digital first. We're managing a portfolio of something over 13,000 customers globally, and we don't have dedicated CSMs. So we have a swarm CSM model, and we have 8 CSMs managing that install base of 13,000 customers. We do everything, or a lot of things, very, very digital heavy. So with that in mind, it's how can we go and extend some of those capabilities to the partner? And so what we did is we actually picked, obviously, friendly partners who had already had the right level of thought process and discipline around customer success. We had reached out to partners who understood the concept of customer success, and in some cases they did, or they didn't have a customer success automation platform already. And so what we did is we picked initially, I think it was 5, and then by the end of the pilot, we had about 13 partners globally. And similarly to how you would onboard a customer, we onboarded partners. So one of the first things that we did as part of the onboarding is we did a customer success 101 training. And we essentially walked them through what is customer success as we recognize it. And we walked them through kind of what we do today from a customer lifecycle management perspective. And throughout that, we learned that, hey, well, we're actually doing this, but we call it something different. And so it was really understanding what the currently partner model was and kind of evolving it to kind of line up into this. In some of the cases, partners did not have a dedicated resource to act as the CSM. And so some existing resources had been repurposed, which they were already doing CSM-like activities, but they really weren't mapped to kind of what I would call the art of customer success. And so what that pilot looked like is we actually onboarded the partners onto our customer success automation platform. We gave them their own view of their customers, and we assigned them a partner success manager who basically acted as their coach. And so, you know, as part of the training, we walk them through what we expect a customer to go through in the first 30 days. And if a customer goes from on track to off track to at risk, what is it that we would normally do? And now that's going to be done by the partner. And so a lot of the workflow rules and automation in the tool were now being redirected at the partner as opposed to internally to our CSMs. And so obviously it was a lot of learning and evolution throughout that year. Some of the things as a CS leader that you walk into when you start going into this world of partners and channel that you probably don't have a lot of context on when you go into is just the whole partner comp model and this whole thing of how do you do proof of performance and those types of things. So those are things that you'll have to kind of uncover and figure out how you solve for, because at the end of the day, you know, in some circumstances, partners will get a higher level of discount if they reach certain level of performance. And so how do you measure that performance and things like that? So for the first year, those are the things that we solved for. We felt like we actually created a pretty good rinse and repeat model. So we capped it at 13 partners globally. Like I said, right now, those 13 partners represent almost over 400 accounts globally. And now what we've done is we actually created kind of a triage where our partners can actually fill out an online maturity assessment. And based on the output of that maturity assessment, we can gauge whether or not they're ready to participate in the program or not.
Thank you for sharing that, Carlos, because like I said, I just think it's such a great example of how to thoughtfully and responsibly scale into this space. So really, really appreciate that. Peter, you want to take the next question?
Sure. So I'm just going to kind of set it up by talking about some research from Deloitte. That they said a couple of years ago that 3/4 of partners complained about overly complicated partner programs from the vendors, and said that they looked for increased support, transparency, and predictability in these programs. Close to 40% of partners wish for consistent rules of engagement, improved training programs, and simplified incentive management. And 61% of partners feel that they have insufficient strategic guidance and would like more transparent market development fund requirements, while 70% of partners feel that the onboarding process have too many steps and could be streamlined. That's a lot of statistics, but knowing that many companies already have partners, programs, and teams that execute accordingly, what role can customer success play in improving the perceptions of partners and in their ability to turn around and improve the perception of the end customers? Back to you, Star.
Glad you laid me up for an easy one here, Peter. I think when you think about activating and onboarding a partner, there are very deliberate motions, and I think oftentimes it's done like thinking that, oh, they're a sales rep, and so I just need to throw all this assets and just, you know, teach them as if they're an AE, and just run them through this boot camp, and they'll be fine, great. But then what they forget, they don't know what it feels like to be a partner that has, you know, maybe 30 different software solutions they might be selling, and that context switching that they might be doing is tricky. So how do you teach them what is the key value pieces that they need to know in order to get onboarded? Oftentimes when programs are built, what we see at Partnerstack is they're taking a look at it from the, you know, whoever is running the partnership. So in this case, say you are the provider, they only look at it from their point of view. They're not looking at it from the partner's point of view. So they don't know what that journey looks like because they never mapped it out. They're only looking at it from their side. So as a result, they don't know what does it take to take them from joining or applying to be part of the partnerships program all the way through to the first activation or the first reward that they might get. And if they're able to look at all of those different stages, they can, you know, it's almost like defining an onboarding program for your own company. It's if they looked at that from its own segment and going, what is the optimal experience? And then to Carlos' point, do pilot programs and then understand where that feedback is and enrich it through its process going, okay, yeah, this is working. Then they actually get more value at the end because they can get them on board faster, activate it. And I'm using activate it, meaning that there's revenue that flows, that happens, and then everyone's happy. But oftentimes it's only looked at from the one lens.
Right. So Carlos, you know, the onboarding experience, of course, is critical, but the word perception in the question, I think I'd like you to kind of zero in on a bit. Why should customer success care so much about the perception of the way that partners delivering the service?
I mean, in our case, one of the things that we actually leaned on as a kind of core value was the competitive differentiation, right? So you're not, in our case, we're a network equipment provider. So we have a lot of, big companies out there doing something similar or trying to do something similar. And so a lot of these partners come in with the perception that we're just going to do the same thing. And so I think for us, it was very important to listen to them about what are the things that they felt that could be done better from their previous experience. And ultimately, these partners are going to have to invest time and money in these resources, right? And so the ROI needs to be there. And so for us, it was very important that we made it as easy as possible for customers or for partners to kind of be part of this program. One of the things that I wanted to lean on, Peter, and I'll do the shameless plug, right, when it comes to the experience. So Peter, you recently did a white paper on the success case that we just launched the partner program. So for those folks that are on the call, if you guys haven't seen that article, I highly recommend you go check it out. It gives you a little bit more detail about the program that we ran. And it's got specific quotes from the partners that participated in the partner program. And so I think that will actually help answer a lot of that. But what I would say is, I think that in CS, a lot of times, we don't give enough credit to the work that we do when it comes to experience journey mapping. And I'm kind of on this rant right now about CS beyond the CSM, and I want to start talking more about that. But if you think about, and this kind of goes back to what Star was saying, if you think about the work that we do today to onboard a customer and how we go through and build out these journey maps and build out the playbooks of what should happen if a customer is in onboarding and they go off track or whatever, that same design thinking, the same mindset can be applied to any part of the business. And so when you take a look at how you onboard a partner, the same effort and thought process should be taken into consideration, right? So as you're bringing in a partner, what's the welcome letter look like, right? What are the resources that the partner should have, or how do you walk them through, the partner portal? And so just kind of like how you would walk a customer through your product, you're walking the partner through the same ecosystem that they're going to be participating in. And also, it's super important to make sure that you have feedback loops throughout, right? So just like you would get an NPS or a CSAT score from a customer, we also have embedded feedback gathering throughout the engagement with the partners as well. Because to Star's point, this is always evolving. We want to make sure we always have our ear to the ground on what's working, what's not working. But what I would say to the folks on the call is, you really have the secret weapon. If you guys are the ones that are actually building out the journey maps and building out the process maps of playbooks and all that, that same skill set applied to not only partners, but tech support, trials, and all that is super relevant. And so on our side, it's actually helped us expand the scope beyond customer success. And we're now really more digital engagement across the entire life cycle, from pre-sales all the way through renewal and even tech support, right? Which is not CS. So that's the way I would answer it, Peter, is it's really, from the perception perspective, it's making sure that there's that competitive differentiation and that you come out of the gate making sure this is going to be something that's not going to be, very difficult to adopt.
Yeah, I like that because it reminds everyone that your customers are super critical to your future. And regardless of whether you're dealing with them directly and you have more control over how that service is delivered, or whether it's through your vast partner ecosystem, it matters to you. It should matter to you, even as an individual contributor, CSM, it should be important to you that the partners are properly equipped, properly set up, properly enabled, properly ongoing educated about your own business too. I could keep going with this line of questioning, but I think I want to toss it over to Marley at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Peter. So I love it when this happens, when we get questions from the audience that I think are better than our questions. So I'm going to ask another audience question because I think it's a great one. We've talked already a lot about how partner success can look very different in different organizations. And one of the reasons that is true is because there are so many different types of partners, so many different forms that partner relationships can take. So this question from Steven says, partners are often associated with implementations and projects, but are there different models and specific strategies and programs for post-implementation partner success models? Star, I'm going to throw that one to you first. When we're not talking about implementation, What else can that model look like? And maybe it might be helpful for the audience to start by talking about some of the different partner relationship types you've seen in the past as well.
I'm not, I might be misinterpreting the question a little bit. And so if I go off rails, someone put me
I'll
back
stop
on
you.
them. When I think of like partners that are doing like implementation and projects, that could be anything from agencies, it could be third-party companies that's coming in place. And when we think about models and strategies, I'm not sure if we're talking about like how do we engage with them? How do we bring them on the journey? Because there's multiple different ways I think this can be interpreted, but I'm going to go down the road of how do we take them on the journey? So from my point of view, who has a services background, this is really something that excites me, and I haven't done this yet at Partnerstack, and I'm very excited to do it at some point, is implementations and projects where you're using a third party or some type of agency. You do need to figure out what that experience looks like for them. How do you get them onboarded and activated? Because essentially they are an extension of you. And so, you know, to start that, are you ready for it? And there's lots of checklists and stuff that you need to do in place before you can bring them in, and making sure you bring them in at the optimal time. And does your revenue model actually support bringing in these types of partners? But let's assume all of that's a yes. Then from a specific modeling and strategies, I would then just map out who are the types of partners that you are wanting to bring in, what type of implementation projects are they doing, you know, what does the expectation from the customer look like, and then align those, and then do your journey mapping or your customer experience mapping, going, what is the optimal experience to get those partners activated as fast as you can, but also delivering on your vision of what you have as well, without compromising that company's mission too. Because that's the hardest part, right? Because they're their own entity and they're going to have their own pieces of values and integrity that they're wanting to hold to. And you also have yours, making sure there's some harmony between the two and that the experiences somewhat line up. So at the end of the day, the customer is getting what they need, but then the partner's getting what they need, and you as the provider is getting what you need.
And before Carlos, you answer, I just want to comment that Stephen Morelli, who asked that question, is a former colleague of mine. So I think I know where he's coming from in the broader context of he's working at Oracle. And yes, it's true. A lot of the partners are focused on implementations and very specific projects with the partner, with the clients. Now, a lot of those partners are massive global entities, and in many ways, Oracle is just another partner of theirs. So I guess the challenge for someone like a Steve Morelli is, how do we ensure the partner stays engaged and understands the broader context of what we want to achieve with driving outcomes with the Oracle brand, beyond just the implementation and specific projects. So Carlos, I just thought I'd add a little more color to that.
Yeah, so I think that's a great toss up, and I run the risk of actually kind of blowing this up a little bit bigger. So give you some context. I'm also part of the services organization, right? And so when you take a look at the different opportunities for this, we do have, professional services, and we have folks that will go out there and do rack and stack, and they actually do some of the deployment piece. When I think about customer success, and when I take a look at the way that we kind of orchestrate it, to me, customer success is an umbrella over the services organization. And in some of the work that happens in professional services, onboarding, training, even CSMs, tech support, renewals, all those functions, all those silos or verticals are actually tied together by this customer success capability, which is building out those journey maps and making sure that people understand how they're accountable to the team on the left or on the right, and what they expect from the team on the left, right? And so with that in mind, it actually made me realize something. So although we built out this partner success program where partners are scaling and helping us deliver CS engagements on our behalf for our SaaS products, in the services organization, what we've also contributed is we've built out those journey maps, and we've identified, the ratio of who's working with the customer when to create that seamless experience, right? And so in that model, what we do is that we identify, I think we call them customer engagement managers, and they're the ones that are actually kind of managing the partner ecosystem through the delivery. And so at that point, it's not expected that the partners have to have this whole concept of what customer success looks like and what they have to do. It's actually orchestrated by the CEM, and the capabilities and the KPIs of on-time delivery and all that stuff still lie on our shoulders to the CEM, but the partners that are brought in to deliver are actually identified as part of that PS engagement. So I would say in that, I would say we call it a helicopter CSM, kind of like helicopter parent, where you have a CSM who's managing that throughout. Because I think that ecosystem is so big. To your point, Peter, we have a similar thing, right? You might have to do, an installation somewhere in Malaysia, right? And trying to find that partner, it's just not going to happen. And time is of the essence. So we actually bring that CS capability back in-house, but managing kind of that a little bit broader than just a kind of professional services project manager, because it does go beyond installation, right? Once it's installed, we also offer, for example, a managed services component. So once it's installed, we actually manage and own the network on behalf of the customer, right? So it's that handoff between. So that's the way that I would answer that. Is that's how we would normally do it, is we bring it back and manage it on the inside.
Steve,
I like that too.
Steve, let's catch up. So I'm interested in your thoughts on how that. Okay.
You heard it here first. Helicopter CSM.
I love that, Carlos. Give me a great chuckle. Okay, so reminder to our audience, please send us your questions as well. We want to make sure we're addressing topics you want to cover. But I want to talk about, we've talked about how involved customer success should or shouldn't be in the partner world, right? We have a channels team, we have a customer success team, kind of who owns that. But do you guys think that the customer success organizations, generally speaking, are structured and enabled in ways that really do facilitate the creation of that strong partner success? Do you think that's common? What are some areas that you think CS leaders maybe should think about improving if they're thinking about branching into the partner success space? Star, let's start with you.
I'm going to wear my CCO hat and give a CCO answer. I think as a play of like from a customer perspective, it doesn't necessarily matter where it lives. I'm indifferent whether it's in sales, whether it's in CS, because at the end of the day, it's really is who's providing the most value. Sometimes you might be too small of a team to have it under CS, and sometimes it makes more sense to be in sales or partnerships, etc. But I think it's our opportunity to really teach other departments to know what customer success is. So one example is channel manager, partner managers. What a great opportunity. They're really good at managing the sales funnel. Why can't we team up and be very effective to teach them what the nurturing can look like from a channel partner or a CPM in order to do that very effectively, especially if you have, a fairly immature partner program. Instead of like going, okay, well, we're going to create a partner success team that's different from your CPM, you might not be ready as a company to do that. But then it might be a great opportunity to truly team up and teach both teams. And then you can really have the empathy between the teams of what is the uniqueness of customer success and what is the uniqueness of sales, and really have them harmonize together. And so, yes, there's opportunity for us when you're a bigger company, which I think Carlos will likely touch on. But I want to give some love to the smaller organizations. But I think it's an opportunity to really share the knowledge and perspective of what we have in customer success, and really give an opportunity to teach our CPMs.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think commonly when we think about the channel and we think about partners, we're thinking about super large organizations, right? But they're not the only place in which this is part of the business. It's critical in a small business scenario as well. So I think that's a great point, Star. Carlos, what do you think on this one?
Yeah, no, just to touch on something that Star mentioned, and I think I resonate with that as well. I think it's important for us to understand that as CS leaders, we are the subject matter experts in the company as what a customer success model should look like, right? And so I don't think that we should come in and just expect like it's all gonna be figured out. So based on your company size and all that, you will determine kind of what the best model forward is. One of the first things that we do, or we did when we launched customer success, is we did an executive roadshow. and we walk through all the senior execs and explain to them what our charter was as a CS organization, and really educate them on what customer success is and the value that the company would get by establishing this discipline. What ended up happening is, because of that, customer success now became top of mind for a lot of those leaders, and they just kind of parked it. And then, over time, they would go into their own, professional trade shows and conferences, and they'd come back to me like, we just heard at this conference that, this company is starting to do a partner success program. Like, what do you think about that, right? And so we planted the seed early on, and that's just actually what happened to us. Is, let's be real, I'm not an expert on channel and partner ecosystems. That's not my bag, right? But we have a really solid partner team. And so it was when we came together and we started saying, well, what's the need? What is it we're trying to accomplish? That's how this really evolved. And so, like, from our perspective, we're going back to the original question of where does CS sit? The way that I look at it is this: I created a center of excellence framework that allows for CS delivery to sit anywhere else in the company. CSMs don't have to report to my organization. But what we do want to do is we want to make sure that we're leveraging the same framework, we're leveraging the same tools, and we have data all in one place. And so as long as we respect the COE framework from a systems, tools, and processes perspective, delivery can sit anywhere else. And so in our model, what we've done is the partner team or the channel team really own this partner success program. They have a partner portal. They can go in and bring in the partners. They qualify the partners and all that good stuff. In our model, we own the partner success manager just because they got to be closer to the tool. But ideally, that role can be co-funded, right? The PSM can be co-funded. And in some of the more mature companies, what normally happens, sometimes they even fund a resource at the partner location using MDF and all this other stuff to sit on our behalf. And so those are all the models that I think as a CS leader are kind of new to us, because that's not our domain. But really having that tight partnership with the channel folks and really educating them on CS while they educate you on this partner ecosystem is really kind of a path to success, right? It's not about, who knows more. It's really of, I know the CS piece, they know this, the partner program. So, I personally think that it works well where the partner success program lives there, because guess what? They also have, and Star, you're probably familiar with this, right? Being the services, you have partners who have a certain level of certification because they're also providing level 1, level 2 support, right? So I have all these other programs that already exist. This is just another one of those offerings that they could offer. So keep it there, but then lean on the framework from a COE perspective that you've built as a CSM organization to help enable that.
That's fantastic, because the COE framework really allows the whole company to kind of participate in a sense of a customer success philosophy.
And it leads
a better opportunity, right?
Yeah, and by the way, it also opens itself to be very collaborative, and it gets away from this whole "I'm going to build my empire" feeling, right? It's you're enabling the rest of the company to go in and build these capabilities as needed, but just make sure that you're landing on the same centralized framework.
Terrific. So, I'm going to surprise both of you. I did not share this question with you. I just thought of one this morning, and I want to ask you. You guys are both very seasoned people in business, so you should be able to, and you're both senior leaders, so you can be nimble on your feet. So I'm going to toss this question at you. So TSIA says that an industry best practice is to align partner incentives to growing annual recurring revenue. This includes paying partners for performance tied to incremental customer spend, upsell, cross-sell, and renewals above the initial contract value. What are your thoughts on this strategy, and do you think current customer success organizations are generally capable of aligning partners with partners in this way? Star, let's go with you.
I love that I end up going first in all of these. And then Carlos comes in with all the tactical answers at the end, and I'm like high level strategic, and I'm like, damn it, that's the answer I should have gone with. Going back to the question.
Yeah, so
I think the question summary is, should partners drive revenue, right? Should they be part of the growth strategy, driving growth revenue?
And should you as the vendor put in place incentives for them to be focused on expansion revenue? Right.
Depending on my 2 cents, depending on what is the maturity of your partnerships program. So we're making some assumptions that they're in the reseller motion, which if you're an SMB that's on this call, you're not in that motion. You're likely somewhere in the upper mid-market, maybe even mid-market and enterprise space. That distinction. So I think at that point, your organization is mature enough to actually drive those incentives. And you would have someone that's able to nurture that partner to drive that change. I think where there's the organization itself will have to be completely aligned. Is I think where the gaps could be, but I don't foresee, I think at the end of the day, it is everybody's responsibility to continue to help the customer grow, but you're growing through the value in which you're bringing to them. If there's the opportunity to add an upsell or something else that's only just going to further their growth for reasons why they're buying your platform, then I do not foresee any reason why a partner wouldn't want to do that in the first place. Now, if you're a sales driven organization, it's all about just driving sales and your transactions, then yeah, the answer might differ. So I think you have to look at what type of organization are you? Are you product led? Are you customer led? Are you digitally led? Are you engineer led or you sales led? And then depending on what that motion is, the answer might change. Is it feasible for your organization to drive it because you're going to drive the right behaviors to get the right outcome you're looking for?
Yeah, I see this question more. I agree with you, Star. I think partners would not object to this, frankly, because it's expanded revenue for them too, if they do it properly. I think this is more of a challenge for customer success. And Carlos, I wonder what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my mind's racing. There's so many ways to go with that. But before, I think I screwed up. So there was a question from Frankie about a template or a deck or white paper for the program. And so Marley, I don't know if you guys have the link, if you guys want to throw it on here, but there is a white paper that ESG did around our model. And then Peter, I believe there was also a TSIA webinar that we did on this partner program as well, right? So I don't know if we have that, but you can search it there. So that's actually a really good question. So going back to TSIA, talking about how you measure the partner success and measuring kind of their growth of the ARR. For us, we took a little bit of a different approach, and I actually was a little nervous because it's a little controversial, right? So a lot of our partners come to the table where our competitors provide them incentives and pre-fund some of the work that they need to do to be part of this program. But on the back of that, they also charge the partners to go through an audit process to be certified to be this thing. So what we decided to do is that we would kind of meet in the middle. We're not going to charge you for that, but at the same time, we're not going to pay you to go in and do this. This is something that you should want to do organically because it's going to result for better growth in your install base. And so the way that we essentially, I would say, pay our partners is by giving them access to the tooling and the assets and that type of stuff. And the way that we measure the partners is kind of very similar to the way we would measure a CSM, right? Which is, X number of your customers need to be in the green throughout the life cycle, right? And if you're achieving that, you're improving the experience of the customers and you're getting them to adopt, then just organically, you're going to find expansion, cross sells, and growth opportunities as part of that, right? Again, this is stuff that we're still evolving. Things will change over time as this thing becomes more scalable and a much bigger solution. But for us, initially, it was really about driving engagement from the partners into the customers and getting them to go in and drive that value. And in every single case, when you take a look at, so to answer the question, we do actually track the net revenue retention, which is, churn plus upsell equals anything north of 100%. And we're seeing somewhere around 115 to 135% NRR as part of the program. And so that itself will result in higher discounts and growth for the partner. So we didn't have to incentivize partners to be a part of this. The incentive is that their existing install base is growing, and we have proof of that.
That's interesting. Yeah, so you're actually probably going beyond the best practice then, because you're not so much focused on stimulating the partner ecosystem because they already realize that there's value for them.
We're actually really betting on FOMO.
Yeah, fear of missing out, right?
Yeah. That's exactly what's happening. There's these partners that hear about it and they don't know how to get started. It's like, well, we can help you get started, right? Like, this is how you launch. And we actually have a program where if you don't have a customer success automation platform, we'll let you on ours. And at some point in maturity, you go and build your own and you can take it with you, right? So that though it's creating that, reducing the barrier to entry and make it easy for them to go and engage.
So,
I hope
so
you have
Carlos,
affiliate links for that software so that you're also collecting the revenue on the referral that goes with it. Talking about partnerships.
I'm monetizing this webinar as we speak.
So Carlos, I was just going to say, you're a very outspoken leader. You're well known in the industry. I would call you a bit of an outlier, though, because I don't think many fit this profile. But both of you, Star and Carlos, what do you think CS leaders need to do? I know it was kind of asked a little bit earlier, but I'd like to kind of hone in on it a little bit.
I'll go first. Go ahead.
What do CS leaders need to do to step up their game, in the world of broadening kind of success through ecosystem of partners?
This is a very passionate topic of mine, and I always tell people, and I get a lot of flack for this, but like, I don't necessarily want to be known as a customer success leader, right? I feel like I'm a person who's got a background in services support, and I've been in companies in machine learning and automation. I feel like I'm a technologist that's solving the customer success problem using tools and engagement. I actually see a lot of this on LinkedIn, where we see CS leaders that are going from company to company every year and a half, right? And when I look at that, I ask myself, well, how do they measure success of themselves? Because when they come into a company as a CS leader and they leave before any of those customers that onboarded while they were there have even renewed, how do they know they were successful? Right. And so for me, one of the things I always say is I think a good CS leader has to have a backbone. There's a lot of evangelization that has to happen. There's a lot of glass breaking that needs to happen, because I could tell you, that overly used term of customer success is not an organization. It's a philosophy. That is something that a CS leader has to carry. That's the flag you carry, right? And that goes into every discussion, whether you're fighting for telemetry from the product with engineering, whether you're fighting from TAC perspective to get the feedback from the cases that are coming in, whether you're going and building out a partner program and trying to convince people of this, right? I would say that, we have to be very careful about CS leaders just being kind of sales puppets and just responding to the pressure that we get from driving ARR. My whole rant is thinking beyond the CSM, right? There's so much work that this team does to enable CSM engagement that I don't think we do a good job of evangelizing. So when you take a look at your CS ops team, your digital comms team, your enablement team, all of that work that happens in the background to enable the CSM can actually be distributed, and the rest of the company can also benefit from it as well. And so what I would say is, sure, have your metrics on CSM performance and NRR and all this other stuff, but then talk about that your team's the only team that can actually track retention. Your team's the only one that can actually track a customer through all these different systems, as it's going through, right? Like, all of that adds a hell of a lot of value. And I don't think we do a good job of really, promoting all that back end work that's done just to come up with a green status on an account, right? And all of that stuff can be made available to sales, to engineering, to all the other things. So my whole, again, Peter, this way you touched on it, right? My whole rant is we have to think beyond the CSM. As CS leaders, we are the transformation engine for the company. And so we can't just think about our kind of, narrow focus of, customer lifecycle management. It's the whole quote to crash process, right? How do you drive that experience so that you capture how the customer did? Where did they get hung up on while they were trying to purchase, so that when we onboard them, we can apologize that they went through that. We're going to make it better for them, right? It's driving that end-to-end visibility, both outwards and inwards, that I think is the opportunity for a good CS leader.
Yeah, well, that was very passionate, Carlos, and I 100% agree. Star, you and I have known each other, I think it's probably going on 8 years now, and you've been in a variety of roles, more than a year each, by the way. So I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this, especially from your vantage point of a CCO.
The first thing we need to stop doing is calling success management customer success. That's got to stop. It drives me flipping crazy. And so if you really, get me a beer and get me ranting, it is terrible. But
like a podcast, I need to get together.
Yeah. I think the thing that, I look at customer success, we're really change agents in an organization, right? We truly are the voice of how technology is being used. So the product team is building a beautiful piece of software. You're engineering or designing a beautiful piece of software that the engineer team that builds, that the sales team sells. You really are seeing the value realized, right? It's all a dream until that moment comes. but you are the voice back to the rest of the organization of this is reality. This is how the product is being used. This is what they love. This is what they want changed. And then you can actually use that way of talking across the organization of, yes, we need to make a change, but we in customer success as a whole generally are really good at change management. It doesn't have to do with customer success either. It could be anything. You're implementing a new HRIS system. You can lean in and help them about change management. Oh, okay, we're going to pivot the company because what we were planning in a go-to-market is different than what we want to. Great, lean in on your CS team in order to help you build out what that framework is and roll it out. So, going back to your question of what do we really need to change on is we are just orchestrators of a number, no different than sales is the orchestrator of revenue numbers. Much like if you want to use NPS as a metric for product, they're orchestrators. We're just the orchestrator, so we need all of us participating so that the customers reach their goals. And we just need to make sure we remind ourselves that you do not own the number. You're the orchestrator of it. And a lot of times ego come in play because they get compensated on those numbers, and so they become protectionist. So instead, we need to be a little more open and drive what is the ultimate goal that we're all trying to achieve at the end and let go of the ego.
Love it. Thank you.
Sorry, that was passionate too.
I love it.
No apologies.
No, I think that was both of you. Those were perfect answers. And I think that is the perfect note to end this fantastic, thoughtful session on. Star and Carlos, I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. And thank you to everyone out there for joining us. Reminder that everyone will receive the recording of the session within 24 hours if you want to revisit it. And I hope you'll all join us again next month for the next Customer Success Unlocked. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.